I've been hunting the same 80-acre lease in rural Ohio since I was 19 years old. My dad set it up with the landowner back in 1999, paid him $500 a year for exclusive access. And when my dad passed 8 years ago, I took over the payments and kept the agreement going. I know every inch of those 80 acres. I know where the deer bed down in July. I know which creek crossing they use on cold mornings. I know which fence line they follow when they move between the east field and the hardwoods. I have hunted that property over 200 times in my life. I have never once felt uneasy on it. Not until last November. The first Saturday of rifle season, I was up at 3:30, had my gear loaded by 4, and was walking into the property by 4:15. I always walk in the dark. I use a small flashlight aimed at the ground, nothing more, so I don't kill my night vision before I get settled. The walk to my box blind takes about 20 minutes through the timber, and I've done it so many times I could probably do it with no light at all. I got to the blind around 4:35 and reached for the latch on the door. That's when I stopped. There was a smell coming through the gap in the door. Not a deer smell, not a skunk smell, a human smell. That specific combination of food and unwashed clothing and propane that you only recognize if you've smelled it before. It hit me the second I put my hand on the door, and I just stood there for a moment trying to process what I was smelling. I almost turned around and walked out. I want to be honest about that. My first instinct was to leave and call someone and come back in daylight. But I'd been walking that property in the dark for 20 years, and something stubborn in me pushed the door open anyway. Inside the blind, pushed against the back wall, was a sleeping bag rolled up neat and tight, a canvas backpack, 4 empty soup cans stacked in the corner, a small propane burner with a can of fuel beside it, and a coffee mug sitting on the shelf below the shooting window with dried brown residue in the bottom. The sleeping bag was warm. Not body warm, but recently warm. The kind of warmth fabric holds for an hour or two after someone has been sleeping in it. Someone had been in that blind and left maybe an hour before I got there. I didn't touch anything. I backed out and called my buddy Aaron, who hunts the property next to mine. He drove over and we walked the perimeter together as soon as it was light enough to see. Back behind the blind, maybe 40 yards into the timber, we found a second camp. A blue tarp tied between 2 oak trees, a pile of food wrappers and crushed cans stuffed under a log, a folding knife stuck blade first into a stump, and boot prints in the soft ground going in 3 or 4 different directions. Whoever had been using the area had been there for weeks at minimum, based on the amount of trash. This wasn't one overnight stop. Someone had been living back there. The part that got to me most, more than any of it, was something I noticed when I went back into the blind later that morning. When my dad built that blind in 2001, he carved his name into the wooden frame above the shooting window. Just his first name, nothing fancy, the way you'd initial something to mark it as yours. I had kept it there for 20 years without thinking much about it. While I was standing in the blind waiting for deer that morning, I looked up at the frame and it took me a second to register what I was seeing. The carving had been scratched out. Not worn away, not faded. Someone had taken a knife or a key or something sharp and worked back and forth over the letters until they were gone. Just a rough patch of pale wood where my dad's name used to be. They didn't replace it with anything. They just erased it. I called the sheriff's department that afternoon. A deputy came out, walked the blind, walked the camp, took photographs, and wrote up a report. He found boot prints in 3 different sizes, which meant it wasn't one person. 2 or 3 people had been using the property, coming and going. He said trespassing charges were possible, but unlikely to result in prosecution without catching someone in the act. The game warden said the same thing when I called him. Document everything, install cameras, let them know if it happens again. I put a padlock on the blind. I installed a trail camera on the main access trail, pointed at the path coming in. I finished out the season. The camera caught deer, a coyote, a raccoon. It never caught a person. I started to think maybe they had moved on. Then in January, I went out to check the camera card, and I walked the property while I was there. On the far south end in the snow, there were boot prints, fresh ones, from that morning or the night before. Two sets. Walking the fence line, stopping, turning around, walking back. They hadn't come in through the main trail. They'd come in from the south, through a section I didn't have a camera on, and they had walked my property again in the dead of winter when deer season was over, and there was no reason to be there. I still don't know who it was. I still hunt the property, but I put a second camera in last fall, and I carry a sidearm now, which I never did before. And every single time I walk that trail in the dark at 4 in the morning, I stop before I touch the door of that blind, and I stand there and I smell the air coming through the gap before I go in. I don't know what I'll do if I ever smell that smell again. I want to say up front that I know how some of this is going to sound. I know how it sounds to say that someone was following you through miles of state forest for weeks, showing up in completely different locations each time like he knew where you were going to be. I know it sounds like something I imagined or exaggerated. I've been over it 100 times trying to find the explanation that makes it normal, and I've never found one. I'm 28, and I work construction in western Pennsylvania. I'm not a lifelong hunter. I've been hunting seriously for about 4 years, mostly small game and whitetail, and last year I drew a buck tag for a state forest unit about 90 minutes from my house. I spent a Saturday in September scouting the area, found a good funnel between two ridges where deer sign was heavy, picked a spot for my hang-on stand, and planned to hunt it through October and November. It's public land, so I knew other people hunted it. I didn't expect to have it to myself. I just didn't expect what actually happened. The first day I saw him was the third day of archery season. I was walking out at noon, heading back to my truck for lunch, crossing the edge of a clear cut where the forest opened up. I looked across the cut, maybe 200 yards wide, and at the far tree line there was a man standing there watching me. Not moving, not doing anything, just standing. He was wearing dark pants and a dark jacket, no blaze orange, no camo, nothing that said hunter. I stopped and raised my hand. He didn't raise his back. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, and when I looked again, he was gone. I wrote it off. You see people in the woods, hikers, dog walkers, people who don't know or don't care that it's hunting season. I ate my lunch and went back in the afternoon and didn't think much more about it. 4 days later, I had moved to a completely different part of the forest. I had hiked 2 miles from my original spot to try a new area along the bottom of a hollow, a low, wet spot where I had seen rubs on the way out the previous afternoon. I got there early, got set up, started my sit. Around 8 in the morning, I looked up to check the ridge above the hollow, and the man was standing up there looking down at me. Same dark jacket, same stillness, same posture with his hands at his sides and his face turned toward me. I stared at him for probably 10 seconds. He didn't move. I packed my stand and my pack, and I got out of that hollow, and I hiked out a different way than I came in, adding 45 minutes to my walk, because I didn't want to pass through the area where he was standing. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself the forest wasn't that big, and people cross paths. I believed that well enough to go back the following week. I hunted without incident for 2 more days and started to relax. Then on the 3rd morning, I came out at noon again and drove to the parking pull-off to eat in my truck. About 10 minutes after I parked and started eating, I glanced in my passenger mirror. The man was walking out of the tree line about 100 yards back, onto the gravel road, moving toward the parking area. I put my sandwich down and watched him in the mirror without turning around. He walked to the parking area, looked at the 4 or 5 vehicles there, and sat down on a log at the edge of the lot facing the trucks. He sat there, not on his phone, not drinking water, not doing anything people do when they're taking a rest, just sitting there facing the vehicles. I stayed in my truck for 20 minutes watching him in the mirror. Then a game warden truck pulled into the lot for a routine check. The second the warden's truck turned off the road, the man stood up and walked back into the tree line and was gone before the warden had his door open. I got out and told the warden everything. All 3 times, all 3 locations, the 2 miles between the first and second sighting, the parking lot. The warden listened carefully and then said, slowly, that there had been other reports from this unit. Not just that season, but the season before. A man matching the same description. Following hunters. Appearing in multiple spots in a single day. Sitting near vehicles. The warden said there had never been a direct confrontation in any of the reports. Never an explicit threat. And without that, there was very little he could do legally. He took my number and said to call if the man ever approached me or blocked my vehicle or said anything directly threatening. Then he asked me to describe the man one more time and wrote something in his notebook. A few weeks later, I called the warden back and asked if they had ever figured out who it was. He said they had a name. I asked if charges had been filed, and he said no. Nothing had ever risen to that level. I asked him the question I actually wanted answered, which was why. Why hunters specifically? Why follow people through miles of forest? Why appear and disappear? Why sit in the parking lot watching trucks? What was the point of it? The warden was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said he honestly did not know. He had been working that district for 11 years, and he had never been able to figure out the answer to that question. That answer bothered me more than anything else that happened. Not the sightings, not the parking lot. The fact that someone who had dealt with this person for 2 hunting seasons, across multiple complaints from multiple hunters, still could not tell me what he wanted. I didn't finish that season. I haven't gone back to that unit. I hunt closer to home now, on smaller private land where I know every person who has permission to be there. I'm a lot more careful about where I park my truck. I'm 35 years old. I work in IT, which means I spend most of my life staring at a screen in an office, and the one thing that keeps me from losing my mind is hunting season. I don't mean that dramatically. I mean that the 3 or 4 months a year when I'm in the woods before dawn with no cell service and nothing to think about except wind direction is the only real break my brain gets from everything else. I've been hunting seriously since my mid-20s, and in that time I've gotten very particular about the places and routines I trust. 4 years ago, I got permission from a timber company to hunt a stretch of their land in northern Michigan. Handshake agreement, nothing formal, just an understanding that I could access a specific section of their holdings as long as I checked in every season. It's remote. The nearest house is 4 miles away, and the logging roads into the property haven't been maintained in years. I have never, in 4 seasons of hunting it, run into another person on that land. Not once. That was the thing I valued most about it. I could go in knowing with complete certainty that I was alone. I have a hang-on stand on a white oak on a ridge that I have used every single year since I first got access. I found the tree the first time I scouted the property. Perfect setup. Steep ridge, natural pinch point, morning thermals that carry my scent away from the bedding area below. I've taken 2 good bucks out of that stand. I know the sound that ridge makes in the wind. I know which squirrel lives in the hollow log at the base of the hill and comes out at first light every morning. I know that place the way you know a room in your own house. Last October, I climbed to my stand in the dark at 5 in the morning, the way I always do. I got settled, clipped in my safety harness, set my bow in the holder, and started glassing the field below while I waited for light. When it got light enough to see the tree line across the shooting lane, I noticed something on the oak directly opposite mine, about 40 yards away. A trail camera. Strapped to the trunk at roughly the same height as my platform, facing directly at my stand. I sat there looking at it for a while, running through explanations. Maybe the timber company had started doing wildlife surveys. Maybe someone else had gotten permission after me. Maybe I had put it there myself and somehow forgotten, which I knew wasn't true, but my brain offered up anyway because it was easier than the alternative. I climbed down and walked across to the tree. The camera was a mid-range unit, nothing fancy, dusty and weathered like it had been there through multiple seasons. There was an SD card in the slot. I took the card out, put it in my shirt pocket, and drove home. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and put the card in my laptop. There were 847 photos. They spanned 14 months, going back to August of the previous year. I was in every single one of them. Sitting in my stand, walking in through the timber, walking out in the dark, my headlamp visible as a small orange glow, adjusting my harness, glassing, eating a granola bar. And in one photo, taken on an afternoon in November of last year, sleeping. I had dozed off in my stand on a slow afternoon. I remembered that day. I remembered waking up stiff and cold an hour before dark, and thinking I had been stupid to fall asleep up there. In the photo, I am slumped slightly to the left with my chin toward my chest and my bow across my knees. The photo is taken from below and to the right of my stand, not from the camera's fixed position across the lane. Someone was standing at the base of my tree while I slept, close enough to reach up and untie my boot if they wanted to, and they took a photograph of me. There were other photos taken from that same low angle, not many, maybe a dozen scattered across the 14 months. They were always taken from directly below, looking up at the platform, close enough that you could see the expression on my face clearly. Someone had been on the ground beneath my stand at least a dozen times that I knew of, probably more times than the camera recorded. The most recent photo was time-stamped 3 days before I found the camera, 6:40 in the morning. It showed me in my stand from the fixed camera position across the lane, just me looking out at the field with my bow in my hand. I had been on that property 3 days ago. I had walked in alone before light, hunted all morning, walked out after dark. I had not seen or heard another person. I had been certain I was alone. I called the county sheriff that evening. A deputy came out the following morning, and I walked him to the stand and showed him the camera and the tree and the footprints I had found below the platform when I went back to look for them. He took the camera into evidence and asked me several times if I had any idea who might have put it there. I didn't. The timber company contact I spoke to said they hadn't authorized any wildlife monitoring and had no idea anyone else had access to that section. The deputy said they would try to pull prints off the camera housing and would be in touch. That was 6 months ago. I have not heard back. I called twice and was told the case was still open and they had no updates. I haven't been back to that stand. I'm not sure I'll go back to that property at all, even though the timber company has told me my access is still good. The stand is still up there on that white oak. For all I know, the camera is back on the tree across from it. The thing I cannot stop thinking about is the photo of myself sleeping. The one taken from directly below, from the ground, close enough to see my face clearly. I don't know how long whoever it was stood there that day. I don't know how many other times they were under that stand before the camera was there to record it. I don't know how many mornings I climbed up in the dark thinking I was alone, while someone stood in the timber below me watching me get settled. 4 years. I hunted that stand for 4 years, believing I was completely alone on that ridge. I was wrong about that for at least 14 months before I found out.